So, this is humanity's response? Chancellor Thal sneered, mandibles twitching as laughter rippled through the Galactic Council's chamber. You were called to deploy forces for peacekeeping, and you send, what? A single soldier? The human's ambassador stood motionless, arms behind his back. No protest. No defense. Just a calm voice. He's already there. Silence fell like a guillotine. Somewhere on Zaltor's war-torn moon, a shadow moved through the jungle. Silent. Invisible. Final. His name was Dorian Reeve. And the galaxy was about to learn why humans never send many. Because they only need one. Dorian Reeve's boots pressed silently into the dusty red soil of Zaltor's moon as he melted into the shadows. Far above, in the austere splendor of the Galactic Council chamber, voices dripped with contempt. Chancellor Virex Thal's voice resonated, cold and disdainful, as he declared, "Humanity, the so-called fragile species, dares to hide behind words while the rest of us shape destiny." His tone carried mockery, yet beneath lay a palpable unease. The gathered alien dignitaries exchanged skeptical glances, their eyes alight with the thrill of shared superiority. At the center of the chamber, Earth's ambassador, a composed figure clad in understated regalia, raised a slender hand. His voice, measured and calm, cut through the escalating derision. "We have no need for an army to prove our resolve," he stated, his tone unwavering. "A single operative has been dispatched, our finest. His presence is both a symbol and a guarantee." The silence that followed was heavy, punctuated only by the slow, deliberate clink of ceremonial artifacts. The council members leaned forward, their curiosity piqued by the promise of unexpected action. Back on the desolate moon, Reeve surveyed his surroundings with a practiced eye. The landscape was a harsh contrast to the sterile opulence of interstellar courts, a barren expanse scarred by ancient battles and punctuated by crumbling alien ruins. His mind, trained to dismiss sentiment, catalogued every detail: the jagged rock formations, the eerie silence broken only by the distant rumble of subterranean currents, and the ghostly remnants of past conflicts etched into the earth. In that isolation, he embodied a single, lethal purpose. A concealed comlink buzzed in his ear. "Reeve, report," came the crisp, clipped voice of his mission controller. Without breaking stride, he replied, "Position secure. Infiltration complete. Observing enemy patrol routes." His words were brief, a necessity born from years of training to strip language of all but the essential. Every syllable carried the weight of countless missions. The comlink was his tether to command, and its efficiency was a lifeline in this hostile domain. He advanced along a ridge, his eyes scanning for movement. Memories of his grueling training sessions intermingled with recollections of previous missions, a montage of rapid strikes, silent extractions, and calculated risks. The ghost of his past whispered in his mind, urging him to embrace the silence that followed in his wake. Reeve recalled a mentor's words: "Courage is measured not by the size of your battalion, but by the precision of your strike." That philosophy, etched into his very being, now propelled him forward into the unknown. The night deepened, and with it, the murmur of enemy patrols grew louder. Reeve's focus sharpened as he identified a small contingent of Threxerai scouts moving in a loose formation near a derelict outpost. In a heartbeat, he melted into the darkness. His movements were a study in controlled lethality, each step calculated, each breath measured. The alien soldiers, preoccupied with their own petty rivalries, remained oblivious until it was too late. A sudden whisper of movement drew his attention, a lone guard, separated from his unit, wandering too close to a narrow canyon. Reeve seized the moment. Slipping behind the man, he gripped his combat knife tightly, the blade glinting under the pale light. With silent precision, he struck. The guard's eyes widened briefly in shock before he slumped into the dust, his final exhalation barely audible. Reeve paused, listening for any sign of alarm, then pressed on. He navigated the labyrinthine ruins with the ease of someone who had long since internalized the landscape's rhythms. The alien architecture, though ancient and eroded by time, still exuded an intimidating presence, a testament to the once mighty civilization that had forged these monuments. In the ruins, Reeve found cover and, with deliberate care, set small charges on a cluster of unstable rock. His plan was not to destroy indiscriminately, but to create confusion, a strategic explosion that would signal his arrival without compromising his position. A brief static over the comm link interrupted his work. "Reeve, do you read? Confirm target neutralization and continue mission," the controller's voice demanded. He replied softly, "Affirmative. One enemy down, initiating Phase 2. The brevity of his words belied the gravity of the situation. Every action was a calculated message, a demonstration that underestimating one human was a mistake the Council might come to regret. As the minutes stretched into an eternity, the carefully planted charges reached their critical moment. A muted explosion echoed through the barren expanse, sending tremors that unsettled the enemy lines. From his hidden vantage, Reeve observed the resulting chaos. The HFY, thrown into disarray, scrambled in confusion, their sophisticated communication systems overwhelmed by the sudden disruption. In the ensuing panic, 2 more outposts fell silent. The message was clear: humanity's lone warrior was not a figure of legend, but a force of nature. The distant echoes of the explosion reached the Galactic Council, where a murmur of disbelief spread among the assembled dignitaries. Thal's sneer faltered for just a moment before he recovered, masking uncertainty with further invective. "Do you suppose this human is a ghost, or a phantom born of our overconfidence?" He mused aloud, his tone a blend of amusement and irritation. The ambassador, however, offered no such jests, only the promise of a reckoning that would come swift and decisive. Reeve, his heartbeat steady and his senses honed, continued his solitary trek across the desolate terrain. Each step brought him closer to the heart of the enemy's operations, a hidden outpost where he suspected the roots of the Council's manipulation lay. His every movement was a blend of stealth and resolve, a silent vow that the message of Earth would not be lost in the vastness of space. The burden of representing an entire species pressed on him, yet it was a burden he bore without hesitation. For in every measured step and every whispered command, he carried the legacy of those who had come before, a legacy forged in the fires of relentless determination. In the distance, under the spectral glow of alien moons, Reeve's figure merged with the landscape, a single, indomitable force set against the backdrop of a universe that had underestimated humanity for far too long. His mission was far from complete, but the seeds of doubt had already been sown among his adversaries. Each explosive disruption, every silent strike, was a clarion call that would soon reverberate through the corridors of power in the Galactic Council. A final communication crackled through his earpiece. "Reeve, rendezvous at the extraction point. Maintain radio silence until secured." With no time to waste, he acknowledged with a terse "Copy," and moved toward the meeting zone, his resolve unbroken. The night swallowed his silhouette as he pressed onward, a solitary sentinel whose very existence challenged the prevailing assumptions of weakness and hesitation. In that fleeting moment, the destiny of humanity was being rewritten, one silent, lethal act at a time. Every breath, every heartbeat was a testament to the truth that courage need not be loud. It could be measured in the quiet resolve of a single individual, determined to show the galaxy that even when underestimated, humanity possessed a strength that could not be ignored. The sun never fully rose on Zaltor's moon. A dense violet haze clung to the horizon, dim and thick as if the world itself refused to wake. It was perfect. Dorian Reeve crouched beneath the rusted frame of a collapsed alien warcruiser, half buried in dust and decay. He hadn't slept. He never did on missions like this. A few hours of controlled breathing had lowered his vitals, stilled his thoughts, and brought him closer to the edge he needed, hyper-aware, just past calm, where instincts could speak louder than nerves. Above, a HFY patrol skimmed the ridge in a hovercraft, its scanners humming low. He waited, motionless. A tick of the engine faltered. Too much dust in the intake. They'd land to check it. Predictable. He counted steps by vibration. 4 boots hit the ground, crunching dirt. Talking. Complaining. One laughed, arrogant. Reeves slipped from his cover and moved like a breath of air, closing the gaps silently. His knife caught the first soldier at the throat. The second turned, eyes widening too late. The hovercraft was back in the air 5 minutes later, coasting north on autopilot with 2 bleeding corpses propped in the seats. A message. Not to gloat, Reeve didn't care about theatrics. But fear was a weapon, and weapons had to be loaded. Half a kilometer away, hidden beneath a shattered communications spire, Reeve knelt beside a makeshift transmitter. He unspooled a wire, rigged it into the alien circuitry, and flicked a switch. A quiet buzz confirmed the signal piggyback was live. Spectre 1 to Shadow Nest. How copy? A few seconds of static, then the voice returned, low and tight. Solid copy. Phase 2 cleared. Threxeri chatter is increasing. You've stirred them. They should be stirred, Reeve muttered. They're next. He terminated the signal and left the transmitter rigged with a failsafe, a detonation code keyed to biometric shutdown. If he died, it'd fry the whole node. 20 minutes later, perched in the twisted remains of an ancient radar array, Reeve scanned the terrain with magnified optics. Threxeri outposts dotted the valley below, their watchtowers blinking lazy pulses. Their security was rooted in arrogance, not competence. One compound caught his eye. More guards. More movement. It wasn't a forward base, it was central command for the entire Moon's conflict theater. That's where the decision-makers were. That's where he'd go. He pulled a canister from his pack, popped the seal, and held it to the wind. The faint mist inside was human-engineered but alien in origin, an odorless stimulant key to Threxeri olfactory senses. In their language, it screamed prey. It would drift for kilometers. By nightfall, the command compound was on full alert. Sensors were tripped by nothing. Troops ran drills. Barricades doubled. All for a phantom. Inside the base, Captain Kreltor slammed a fist into the console. The human is baiting us, he growled to his second-in-command. We chase shadows. He's one man, the adjutant snapped. If we push with everything. No, Kreltor cut him off. Not until we understand. This is not normal combat. It wasn't. Reeve knew exactly how fear rotted from within. He'd seen it in a dozen languages, from jungle skirmishes on Earth to orbital sieges in Andrus Sector. Fear cracked unity. Made good soldiers twitchy. Made ambitious officers paranoid. He entered the perimeter under cover of a dust storm, his body sheathed in thermoptic camouflage that blurred him into the landscape. Inside the compound, guards paced in irregular patterns, failing to cover their own blind spots. Reeve slipped past them like a rumor. He climbed to the central tower, crawling through maintenance shafts too narrow for Threxeri armor. There, he located the primary communications relay. It was encrypted, but not well. Reeve connected his wrist module, sifted past civilian channels, found the black line, direct links to Galactic Council servers. The sender code matched Thal's. He activated a small drone from his pack, a whisper-quiet orb with an optical uplink. It would capture everything, route the signal to Earth's deep net, and return when full. Then he found the second line. A different encryption. Not council. Not military. Private. Reeve accessed the last transmission log. It was a video. Chancellor Thal stood in a lavish private suite, flanked by mercenary leaders. Continue the stalemates, Thal ordered, his voice laced with smug authority. We profit from both sides. Let the council bicker while we grow stronger. Humanity will object eventually, but they lack teeth. The feed ended. Reeve copied everything and sent a compressed file to orbit via the drone's bounce relay. Earth's Defense Directorate would have it in 5 minutes. And once it hit the open channels, no one in the galaxy would mistake silence for weakness again. On his way out, he passed a mirrored panel in the tower's maintenance room. He caught his reflection briefly, mud-smeared face, bruised ribs, dark eyes under heavy lids. Just a man. But to them? He deactivated the stealth field, stepped into the open, and let himself be seen. A soldier spotted him. Froze. Reeve raised one hand, then pointed to the communications tower. A second later, the top exploded, silent flash, then roaring flame. Every antenna turned to slag. He sprinted into the chaos, moving with surgical purpose, cutting through confusion, vanishing again before the panic had a shape. Shouts rang out behind him. Sirens, weapons fire into empty shadows. The moon itself seemed to exhale. 30 minutes later, aboard a cloaked surveillance platform orbiting above, Earth's ambassador leaned back as a screen displayed a frozen frame of Thal's face from the video feed. "Transmit to all council representatives," he said calmly. "No comment. Let them come to their own conclusions." On the moon, Reeve crouched in the hills again, watching the glow of the burning tower flicker in the night sky. He sipped from his hydration capsule, cracked his neck, and checked the ammo count on his pulse rifle. 3 bases down. Dozens of soldiers routed. 1 chancellor exposed. And he was just getting started. The air inside the cave was thick with smoke and ozone. Dorian Reeves' arm was slick with blood, most of it not his, but the cut along his ribs still throbbed with every breath. He pressed gauze to it, sealed it with a stimpatch, then pulled his jacket back on without flinching. The fight hadn't gone clean. It rarely did this deep in. Earlier, 2 Threxeri enforcers ambushed him near the eastern ridge. Heavy armor, fast reflexes, trained to deal with insurgents. But not him. He'd taken them down with a thermal charge and a sharpened length of alloy rebar. But one had gotten a glancing blade across his side in the process. Sloppy. That wouldn't happen again. A holographic map hovered before him, flickering in the low light. It displayed the central command structure of the Threxeri operations on Zaltor's moon, overlaid with a new data thread, direct connections from Chancellor Thal to multiple off-record accounts. Reeve rotated the map with a flick of his finger. Each flag node pulsed in red, a string of dirty money and military assets filtered through third-party shell governments. It wasn't just profiteering. Thal was engineering the war from both ends, supplying arms to one side while advocating peace through the council with the other. Classic manipulation. High-level corruption. But now it was mapped. Traced. Tagged. Reeve recorded a voice note. Operation Nexus confirmed. Thal laundering war funding through proxy accounts. Uploading encrypted logs to orbital node. The drone he'd deployed earlier had returned, docking quietly in a crevice behind him. Its lenses clicked as it transferred the visual payload. Once uploaded, Earth's directorate would have every detail, from weapon transfers to falsified peacekeeping reports. But evidence wasn't enough. Not in the council. You needed something louder. He closed the map, stood up, and limped toward the cave's edge. Outside, a pale green haze settled over the hills like rot. The alien moon had a way of looking dead and alive at the same time. His earpiece crackled. Spectre 1, this is Shadow Nest. We received the logs. Excellent work. Orbital transmission in progress. Priority update. Threxeri elite unit has landed near your coordinates. You've drawn attention. He didn't answer immediately. He was already moving. Down the slope, under the broken sky, the outline of a dropship gleamed in the distance. Larger than the others. Sleek. No markings. Not a grunt squad. A purge team. He spoke softly. Let them come. They're not ready. He descended into the valley with a quiet purpose, bypassing tripwire sensors he'd already mapped. Each step calculated. He wasn't interested in confrontation yet. He needed to set the board. As night returned, the Threxeri squad made camp in the canyon, their infrared perimeter active, their formation tight. 9 of them. Reeve watched through his scope from a high cliff. These weren't the loud ones. They moved like predators. Silent alert? Maybe even briefed on him. Good. He moved around their perimeter, planting charges and motion-hacked distractions, rigging the field to turn their tech against them. He bypassed their security field using recycled code from a stolen data chip. Sloppy encryption. Beneath all that muscle, the Threxeri still thought brute force could solve subtle problems. At 0400, just before their patrol rotation, he triggered the first charge. A controlled flash, No real damage, but blinding, disorienting. As they scrambled, shouting orders, two of the squad walked straight into a magnetic snare. Their weapons overloaded, exploding backward. One hit the rock wall so hard his body folded in half. The other split, trying to flank. Reeve dropped smoke and vanished into it. The third fell with a suppressed shot through the lower jaw. The fourth, Reeve let him live long enough to scream before he dragged him out of sight. The rest began firing in every direction. By sunrise, only one remained. Reeve stepped from behind a boulder, weapon lowered. "Go ahead," he said, voice clear and calm. "Take the shot." The Threxerai soldier hesitated. His arms shook. He didn't fire. Reeve pointed at the canyon behind him, where flames still licked the bodies of the fallen. "You were told I was a ghost. You believed it. That's the only reason you're breathing." The soldier dropped his weapon. Reeve tossed him a comm device. "Take this. Walk to the closest relay post. Repeat what happened here. Say it clearly, they only sent one." The Threxerai nodded, silent and pale. Reeve turned and walked away, vanishing into the canyon like he'd never been there. 2 hours later, deep inside another abandoned bunker, Reeve watched Council news feeds flicker to life on stolen terminals. The first signs were subtle, rumors, encrypted chat leaks. Then a verified drop, Val's voice, caught ordering arms shipments disguised as relief aid. Footage of Reeve's assault spliced with the corruption files. A perfect storm. Within minutes, chatter erupted across diplomatic channels. Council members demanding investigations. Others calling the footage faked, until Earth's ambassador confirmed it was genuine. He didn't gloat. Just said, "We have high standards for accuracy." A silence spread across the galaxy. Reeve sat back, shoulder pressed to the cold wall. He didn't smile. The job wasn't over. He opened his comm again. "Shadow Nest, this is Spectre 1. Transmission confirmed. Cleanup complete. Awaiting new orders." There was a long pause. Then, "Stand by. Priority update coming through. Council requesting private dialogue with Earth. Chancellor Thal has gone dark." Reeve's eyes narrowed. Not dark. Cornered. He shut off the comm and rested his head against the wall, just long enough to breathe. 1 minute. That was all he ever needed. Then he stood and disappeared into the next corridor, deeper into the moon's heart. There was more to do. He hadn't come to scare them. He came to change the way the galaxy thought about Earth. And now, it was listening. The dropship came in low, engines screaming against the wind. No transponder, no insignia, no broadcasts. It didn't ask for permission to land. It didn't need to. The Council might have condemned Thal's actions in public, but behind closed doors, they wanted resolution, quiet, fast, and deniable. So Thal hired specialists. Not soldiers. Killers. Dorian Reeve watched the sleek craft settle on scorched stone half a kilometer out. He tracked its descent with heat sensors buried under a thin crust of dirt. 14 signatures. Not mercenaries. Not grunts. These were something worse. The Threxerai called them the Hollow. No names, no records, only kill counts and silence. From his ridge, Reeve noted every movement, their formation, spacing, gear. Synchronized. No wasted steps. They were fast. Faster than the average Threxerai soldier by a factor of 2. But speed didn't mean control. Speed could be redirected. He moved before they did. Set charges along the canyon floor, thin trip mines hidden beneath thermally cooled stones. Up high, he rigged old solar panels to detonate inward when their sensors pinged motion. The terrain was his weapon now. The hollows spread in a fan pattern, scanning the ravine. They didn't talk. Just subtle hand signals. The lead unit stopped at a crumbled satellite dish half buried in sand. Crouched. Sniffed. Reeve had left a trace on purpose, skin oil, less than a microgram. They took the bait. One of them peeled off, vanishing toward the ridgeline. Reeve let him get 30 meters in before triggering the first mine. The blast was brief but surgical, directional. It sheared the Threxeri in half without touching the surrounding rock. The others froze, recalculated. A second unit bolted toward cover. Reeve anticipated the arc of their movement and detonated the solar trap. 3 bodies slammed into the canyon wall, armor bent inward. The shockwave knocked the others down, scrambling sensors. He moved fast. Slid down a chute of gravel, pulled a flash pulse grenade from his belt, lobbed it into the dust. A burst of ultraviolet light lit the canyon like a sun had died inside it. Screams followed, ragged and raw. The remaining hollow regrouped, blind but trained. They laid down suppressive fire toward nothing, dragging their wounded behind makeshift barricades. Reeves stayed in the shadows, one eye on his HUD, the other on the canyon's geometry. He needed them to believe he was everywhere. He threw a sonar spike into the wall and broadcast the pulse. Echoes filled the valley, bouncing chaos into their comms. Their location tags glitched, overlapping positions. One of them shot his own teammate in the confusion. Reeve waited until the smoke choked the last open angle, then dropped in behind the barricade. A silent figure turned. Too late. Reeve's blade found the gap between shoulder plates. He twisted, kicked, grabbed a rifle mid-fall. The others turned. He fired once, center mass. Swung the rifle like a club. Bone cracked. Another dropped. 2 left. One lunged with a shock knife. Reeve pivoted, ducked low, let momentum carry the attacker forward, then brought his elbow down on the back of the Threxeri's skull with a snap. The last one tried to retreat. Reeve grabbed him by the neck, slammed him into the rock wall. The soldier choked out. Why just one? Reeve leaned close, breath steady. Because you don't send a message with a crowd. He let the body slide to the ground. The canyon fell still. Blood soaked into the stone. Acrid smoke rose from cooling metal. The wind returned, soft and uncaring. He stepped over the wreckage and moved to the dropship. The ramp was still down. Clean inside. Minimal supplies. Just extraction gear, medical pods, and a single encrypted tablet resting on the command seat. He took it, cracked the casing open with a pulse tool, and scanned the contents. Mission directive. Eliminate human operative with extreme prejudice. Body required for confirmation. Bonus for intact cerebral core. Reeve didn't even blink. He deleted the message, rewrote the coordinates, and rerouted the ship to one of Earth's hidden orbital nodes. Then he set the navigation system to overload during jump. The ship would disappear from Threxeri space forever, taking every corpse and trace of this ambush with it. Silent. Efficient. Denied. On his way out, he activated the distress beacon. Someone would find the wreckage. Someone would count the bodies. But no one would find him. He climbed the ravine in silence, one boot in front of the other. The storm had rolled in during the fight, dry lightning flashing behind clouds, wind howling like the planet was trying to warn its own inhabitants. Back at his hideout, Reeves stripped his armor and checked the shallow wound along his ribs. The stimpatch had held. No infection. Just bruised. He injected a pain inhibitor and leaned against the wall. 10 seconds of stillness. His comm buzzed. Spectre 1, this is Shadow Nest. Confirm status. He answered flatly. Purge team neutralized. 14 hostiles down. Dropship redirected. No trail. A pause. Then, understood. Be advised, your last strike has shifted Council sentiment. Internal factions are requesting Earth's official stance. Reeve let the words hang in the air. They should have asked before they called us cowards, he said. Another pause. Then static. The line cut. He stared at the glow of the lightning outside, then reached for his rifle again. His pulse was steady. His breath even. This wasn't over. Not until they all understood.